Over the last few days, in the wake of George Knapp's new book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, people have been picking and choosing all these parts out of the book. And one that is catching everybody, I think, by surprise are these accounts of the hitchhikers. Like, once you visit there, something comes home with you. Well, one of these hitchhiker accounts were these orbs that kind of frenzied people and maybe linked to some bad health issues and things like that. So I think those of us out there in the community that have our own orb stories, whether they're benign or inspiring, but I think mostly that come to our mind are the ones that are associated with healing. So I think that's why we just over the last couple of days were like, yeah, let's do something to combat this, evil frenzy orb talk and talk about the nice orbs that are out there. So Alan, we brought you on because, like you said, you've got a lot. Grant, you've got a plethora.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I think we could just say orbs, for my understanding, are non-physical beings. They're light beings. They could be bad. They could be good. They're other dimensions. They could be beings that people have crossed over. I mean, what's left of them is their light body. So we need to dissect the orb categorization, cosmology, to understand what orbs are. What do you?
Well, and that's a good point to make, Alan, because I was thinking about this afternoon, preparing for this a little bit. And, what I considered my first UFO encounter was a green fireball orb. And for years, I searched other cases like that. And for years, I also denied anybody who tried to give me information on spirit orbs. I thought that was totally separate. I didn't put the paranormal with my ufology in those years. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about spirit orbs other than just like this
I think
light in the sky fireball orb.
Well, I want to hear Grant's presentation, but I think the universe may be made of orbs. Consciousness itself, Grant, our favorite, may be orb in its embodiment. I mean, maybe most of the conscious beings in the universe and universes are orbed beings. I mean, they're
right. The made from light, everything exists in light, that sort of. I like Grant's story. Grant, I hope you tell this one about where the beings hold hands and form a circle and then they become the orb.
And then they disappear. Yeah.
Right.
Let me just go through. Let me start by, we got the comment from Chris Bledsoe today about the orbs. And I think that sort of sums it up where Chris said the orbs have been hijacked.
Yeah.
And
what does that mean? What does that
mean? What I'm going to present here is that they've got like 5 orb stories, and they're all sort of these demonic orb things that cause havoc, and they're very evil and stuff like that. And Chris's story is exactly the opposite. And what I'm going to say is that these people haven't got a clue. They have no idea what orbs are about. We've been working on these orbs for a long time. That's what I'll show in my presentation. Demonic. And Chris Bledsoe, for example, had these orbs, and I'll show you some of the orbs Chris Bledsoe had. And all these people have had positive interactions with these orbs. And so you take 5 cases out of what would be literally millions of cases that we now have, photographs, videos, and Nicole and I have done a bunch of panels, and we've got one that I'm trying to set up for this weekend with people from around the world, and all these people have collections of at least 10,000 photos or more. Some of them have collections of 250,000 photos.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, has ASOP dealt with any of these people? Have they gone at you? Because you heard about all these databases they have. Oh, database on this, database on that. Have they ever contacted any of the orb people to find out what's going on? If these orbs are so important and so critical to the whole story, have they talked to the people who actually have the data? We have the data.
Good point, but maybe I should just show my orbs from this mortuary when and because you'll bring it to a higher level. These are sort of mundane astral orbs, I think.
Well, Alan, don't feel bad. I'll show some of my mediocre orbs later.
Well, someone sent this to me, but I think Grant brings it to a whole other spiritual level. I think, there's astral orbs that are not very evolved, and these are just like orbs hanging around a mortuary, probably people who, are still maybe connected to their bodies or something like that. So
Right.
they bring this other body in, and all these orbs get excited. So do you want to see that?
Yeah.
All right. Can you make me the co-host there?
Grant,
just share
I
screen.
accidentally made you the entire host instead of just co-host, so you have those controls.
Let me just,
You'll have to watch for Preston.
yeah, you have to make me a co-host, I think, Grant.
I'm not a host, am I?
Yes, you are. She made you a
I'm the
host.
host. Okay, hang on. Well, I can just give you permission to share here then.
Okay, whatever. Yeah.
Um,
Host has disabled participant screen sharing. Anyway, I think Preston has some great healing stories, and so I think he's very important for this,
I threw it out there last minute.
Okay, you're a co-host now.
Okay, I'm a co-host. Okay, now this is something someone sent me from, is that on your screen?
Yep.
This is actually a crematorium, but they had just brought a new body in and put in one of those things, and you see all these things start to fly around when they right after they delivered this new body. I don't think they're dust particles. They seem to have more intention in their direction.
Well, they're going in all different directions.
Exactly.
Which is critical. I mean, because they're going to say it's dust particles, but the thing is, they haven't got a clue. They have not looked at the data, and that's what Chris is saying. That's what I'm saying, is that if we've got millions of orb things, why are we not looking at that data instead of just grabbing 5 and building a scenario that we need defense funding and we need to kill these evil orbs?
Right. And these orbs were just activated. I mean, the rest of the time is kind of quiet, no orbs in this film until these like new.
Good one. Where do you get this one from?
This is from someone who got a security cam at a mortuary in Florida. So you could, I'll send this to you.
Yeah. We'll put it with our orb stuff. I've got a collection of maybe 20,000 stuff that people have sent me from around the world.
But these
I'll show you some of the stuff from around the world here.
These are not like good or bad. These orbs are just checking out. They're just maybe astral beings that haven't gone to the light, so they're in their orb light bodies, but they're.
Or we really, I would say that we really at this point don't know 100% where they are. But if you're going to say that they are bad, demonic, whatever you want to say, they're bad aliens or whatever, at least look at the evidence. Like, nobody's looking at the evidence. And there's absolutely this one that you have, and I've got all these from around the world that people sent me. There's just stunning amount of evidence, and they haven't even looked at it. And that's the whole point. It's like, to me, it's like tobacco science from 1940 and 1950. We really don't want to look at that evidence. It's like Stanton Friedman says, don't bother me with the evidence my mind is already made up. We have this scenario that we have this hitchhiker thing, and these are evil things. And that's what I can point out in my presentation, is that we have them all over the world, with people are filming them all the time, and they think it's the greatest thing in the world, and it's all very positive, or it's spirits or whatever, and it's completely different things. So at least balance out the evidence, or look at the evidence that there is.
Right.
So let me go
well,
through my.
Preston, Lee has a lot of, I'm sure, stories about orbs and healing and
Preston
everything.
is here now. Welcome, Preston.
Hi, how you guys?
We just kind of got kicked off. We've been chatting, so you haven't missed much.
Okay, have you got my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that's the rest of the story. That's all I'm saying with what they're putting out, is I don't think they have a clue. They've grabbed 5 orb stories, and they've built this scenario that is part of this threat scenario and stuff like that. And so I say, just look at the rest of the evidence, because we've got a lot of evidence on orbs. This is the old deal that we're going to poke the bear here, is to try to balance the story out, to say, there's more than just these 5 reports or whatever they're using, that they're being very selective in what they have. And that comes from the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book. And here's Chris Bledsoe. So Chris Bledsoe, here's the orbs around Chris Bledsoe. And he's got a lot of photos. I think he's got like 15,000 photos. And I'm just going to show that he has these. Here's another orb that he took. He's got piles of orbs. In fact, he had one where they told him, take a camera, shoot at the tree, 5 times in the dark, one after another, click, 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 click. And on the 5th one, the orb comes around the side of the tree. And I said, well, who told you to do that? And he said, Tyler D told me to do that. And it's like, so they understand this thing. It's like, it's not rocket science. There was actually, this is my friend Sergio Lube. He put a whole thing on orbs many years ago, a whole documentary that was done on Gaia TV. And none of this appears in the book. They're not even, that does not in the book, but it's apparent that they're not even looking at this. They have no interest in looking at the data.
I did an orb conference years ago. I did an orb conference like 20 years ago in New York. So they've been around.
This is Teresa from Phoenix. She has probably the best orb stuff outside. I'm just showing the one she's got the video, but her stuff is unbelievable. I've tried to get her on interviews. Here's the first.
Is Teresa also the one who will like meditate or do her thing in the kitchen in that video, and they all like showed up in the kitchen?
Yeah, she's got to be inside, but she's most famous for the ones outside where she's got like orbs going around the trailers and the 1,000 things in the sky, thousands of streaks in the sky and stuff like that. And she's 70 years old, but she will not go on camera. I've told her, she said I can use anything that she's got, but she's not going to go on camera. But she's got the most amazing stuff I've seen. It's just the one that she had. This is Chris Bledsoe. This is the first time I ever saw a beam photograph. And that's what I'm saying. If you actually look at the evidence, it's not just orbs. It's mist. And then, or people will say, I've got these orb photographs. Then I'll say, hey, you got any mist photographs or smoke photographs? They go, oh, I got those. And they start showing you all these things with mist in them. And then I'll say, have you got any beam photographs? And they'll go, oh, I got those beam photographs too. And that's when you start looking at the data, you realize it's not just orbs, it's this mist stuff and it's the beam. So Chris sent me the first beam photograph. This is one from 2015. I thought it was really cool. And then other people started sending me those same photographs.
That's really solid. That's almost physical, isn't it?
Yeah. And we've got them from all around the world. I've probably 1,000 different beam photographs like this. And you'll see it starts in one point. It doesn't go right up into the sky. It starts at a point, or it'll come to the ground and it doesn't actually touch the ground. This is Teresa again for outside of Phoenix, and she's got a lot of these. And you can see like there's orbs inside the beam. The beam is there, and there's all these orbs, different colors, and a lot of different people get the same thing with the colors inside the beam. This one here, this must be a video.
Oh, I think I recognize that.
Oh yeah, this is Chicago,
right?
This is this is Jeff Lurkey from Chicago. Hopefully he'll be on this weekend, and he works for Getty Photo, and he's got. I think I asked him when I was in Illinois. I think he's talking 100,000 or 200,000 photos, and I said, so what do the people at Getty Photo say about your orb photographs? He said, oh, my boss is really interested, and he said they look at it and they go, oh, I don't know what's going on. These are photographic experts who are selling copyrighted photos on the internet, and he works for them, and he's filming all the time. And most of these people have this obsession. They're out every night, they're filming. And so this is just one of 100,000 photos that he's got. This is again, this is out of Scotland. This is Tress. She's an experiencer out of Scotland. You see this. She's got piles of these. I don't know how many tens of thousands she's got. She's got some unbelievable stuff. She's got cats coming out of orbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is Macedonia. So you can see this all over the world. This is Annetta, who hopefully will come on the panel on the weekend. And she's photographing every night, 15, 20, 30 photographs a night. She's photographing. Here's Hong Kong. This is Stan Ho out of Hong Kong. And I would ask him, have you got the beam photographs? Yeah. Have you got the orb photographs? Yeah. Have you got the mist photographs? Yeah. And he's got a collection of all these things. And a lot of the people who were collecting the photographs didn't realize themselves that there was these 3 different categories. And then you start to see other stuff, which I won't talk about. It's getting more complex. And then when you get Skinwalker Ranch in one of the episodes, they go, look at this. And they're all excited. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's a beam photograph. We've got these. We've had them for years. We knew. And they were all excited because they go, look, we've got in the sky. We captured this thing in the sky. And there's people all around the world that are taking this. But when it goes on the Skinwalker, then it's a big story. But when there's thousands of people taking thousands of photographs, nobody seems to really care. Here's the mist photographs, and you can see the beams coming. The beams are starting to form inside. I think this might be from Sedona. This one is definitely from Sedona. That's the moon in the background. But again, it's this sort of a thing that's forming, and then the orbs will form. But first, this mist starts forming, and they're being filmed all over the world. I ask people, have you got any smoke or mist photographs to go?
Are they taking? Are these being taken with iPhones as well as regular digital cameras?
Digital camera, iPhones with flashes, without flashes. It seems to be everybody's using something different. Like we were using these point and shoot cameras here. I'll show you some of the ones we had here, but they're all using different stuff. It seemed to appear when the digital camera came on. That's when the orbs really started to take off. It's like it's in just outside the visible spectrum range, and the digital cameras are picking this stuff up. Here's one inside. This is one inside. Again, but this is like a sort of a spirit type thing. So you see the same sort of pattern. Here's Chris Bledsoe. This is during the day. Again, you get the mist photographs. And I just asked him, I said, you got this mist photographs? And he'd send me this thing. He didn't really know what it was or how it fit in. And I realized that there was these patterns that people were doing. Here's the one just north of where I live, Winnipeg. And you'll see it's very granular. And somebody actually said, oh, they just took sugar and they pasted it onto glass and they photographed through the glass. I'm going, really? You believe that? Because there's also these, and they got lots of these. They have the orbs, but then they get these mist photographs, but theirs are different. They're very granular and they're all different things. And they cover part of the screen. You'll see part of the screen is completely clear. This is Jim Schaefer. This is when I bring up the whole thing about you have the guy that was going 85 miles an hour with his daughter in the car, and this orb comes through and he gets injured. Well, here's the other one. This is Jim Schaefer, who lived in my city, and Jim is an experiencer, and he's got 5 terabytes of material. He was filming like day and night. He's got all these cameras. He's got all this stuff. He's very interested in astronomy. He's got telescopes and stuff like that. And I asked him, because he's an experiencer, I said, hey, Jim, because he had the triangle. If you Nicole and I released the book on the triangle, we have one of photographs of a triangle on Jim's arm. So I said to Jim, I said, hey, Jim, you hear these weird stories about people with their clothes inside out and backwards? And, these people say, oh, the aliens are so stupid, they can't put the clothes on. And yet everybody has the same thing. The clothes are inside out and backwards. I said, that ever happened to you? He said, oh, yeah, twice. I even took a picture of it when it happened. So here he is with his shirt. He wakes up and his shirt's inside out and backwards. And so he's getting these orbs in his room. And he has, as I said, 5 terabytes of material. He had a video camera going all the time. And here's one of the ones that he has, and it's sort of like yours in the morgue. And He's got a lot of these. He's got a security camera going all the time, and that's him sitting on his bed there. And he's
well, have you been to James Gilliland's place up at the East City Ranch?
Yeah, we had some sightings, and I've got some photos. I've got some photos of people inside that circle. We maybe show them on the weekend. Where they're actually doing the posing, and they've got their hands up, and these beams are coming down in Gilliland's in the circle, and they're all these different colors, and they got their hands up and stuff like that.
Right.
As I said, there's got to be a couple million photographs out there, and nobody is there's waving goodbye.
At the Rampa School, that's what they would do during the research, show everyone's orb pictures. There were so many up at the ranch there.
And you even have the one, I haven't seen it, but I've heard about. Chris Bledsoe has one with Jim Semivan, where Jim Semivan is standing by the burning tree. I think he was by the burning tree, and he's completely surrounded by orbs. And that's an interesting one, but I just heard about it. Here's the one where he sent me, I think he passed away of COVID, but just before he died, he sent me this one. And this is where he talks about high activity. He starts clapping, and you see them start to appear. And he's got this connection with them.
And that reminds me of Chris Peters when he was doing this, and they were like coming up out of his hand.
Yeah. So Chris Peters is Barbara Streisand's stepson. He may join us on the weekend because he's got the same sort of photographs here, this orb thing. And you can say it's dust or whatever, but at least look at the evidence. I mean, at least you see big pieces and they're going in different directions. And he seems to be able to, but the key one I wanted to show you is this one. He's got outside. Here's a triangle. Do I need to move it? Yeah. Okay. So here he is doing a triangle. You can see a triangle forming in the sky. So he's filming not just orbs inside. He's got these things forming outside. You can see this triangle forming in the sky. I'm not sure whether you can see it. A bunch of all objects moving in different directions there.
That's great. That is a great image.
I like.
So he's and just to give you, and he's got all this stuff. His Facebook site or his YouTube site is still there.
Where is this taken? What part of the country?
In Winnipeg, where I live.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so anyway, here's the next one. He's got the plane. I think this is the plane. Yeah, okay, so he's got the plane here. And you'll see the plane come into the screen, and then you'll see this orb, because you have all this thing about the Nimitz. Oh, they're in our airspace, whatever. And it's like, it's their airspace. They were here first. It's their airspace. But you'll see the plane going along. And my father actually had a sighting near Winnipeg. My father was a pilot for the government, and he had one. But you'll see the plane going, and it's going out of the screen. And now you'll see the orb coming in, following it. You'll see it right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's one just shot across there.
Just went the bug, so you could say it wasn't a bug. The bug just flew by real close.
Yeah, so there it is, and it's following it. But the one I wanted to show is the blue healing. He's famous. Kathy Martindale he had one shirt that he had woke up with, and it had this stuff on it. And they were trying to analyze the stuff to see it was the same stuff that was on Betty Hill's dress, and that sort of it all got messed up in the analysis. But Kathy Martin spent a lot of time with this guy. And here's the famous healing orb. So you have the thing where the guy gets zapped with the the thing coming through the car or whatever. And I always maintain you've got to look at your intention, that if you're walking around with special forces and guns at Skinwalker Ranch, get ready, because it's got to do with a lot to do with your intention. So here he is, and he had cancer a number of times, and he had cancer, he had lymph node cancer. He had this huge tumor on his neck, and he's going for an operation on the Tuesday. This happens on the Sunday morning. And I said, were you actually praying? Were you actually talking to them to try to get a healing? And he said, yes, I was. And here's the actual video that he has of this. And he's got it in slow motion. And it actually comes down the wall. In some of the videos, if you've got a good screen, you can actually see this thing come down the wall. And he plays it. So it'll come down between, and he said he was very embarrassed that his clothes were on the floor, all dirty clothes. So it comes down the wall. You can actually see it coming down the wall. It goes into his dirty clothes. Then it starts to get big. There it is. You can see it down. There's a wall that's coming into his dirty clothes at the thing. Now you see it starting to get big, and it comes up, and he's filming. He's filming with his camera, and it comes up.
Wow. And it goes
up, and it goes into his body, and he starts swearing, and he had to pull the video. They had to pull the video off, or the audio off, because he started swearing and he was yelling or whatever. And then he said he goes into the bathroom shortly after that, and this big tumor is on his neck, is gone. And so he goes to the oncologist. They're going to do the operation on the Tuesday, I think. And he goes to the oncologist, and the oncologist said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, it just went away." And the oncologist said, it can't just go away. What do you mean it just went away? He said, "I think it went away Sunday morning." and he took it to his regular doctor, who knew what was going on. And his doctor kept making him play this over and over and over again. So you have this thing, you can talk about the story, but this is this healing thing where he had this, and they took the lymph nodes out, but there was no cancer. There was just small lymph nodes. They took them out, so it was all over. So that's the whole thing with.
And they're saying it's the blue orbs that are the negative orbs, and you've just showed us the healing blue orb. So it's like,
and I'm sure Preston, and maybe Preston could jump in. There's all these stories about orbs. And if you're going to have it really talk about orbs with any authority, you have to look at the data. And as far as I know, nobody has gone after these 1.5 million or 2 million photographs or whatever it is. Nobody's gone after the data. Everybody just, is sort of building a case out of really no evidence. And that's what Chris said. They have the lack of data. They have people have kidnapped the orbs, and they have a lack of data. And that's what I say. They have not looked at the data. There's a lot of data. Nobody's contacted me. Nobody's contacted any of these people around the world. This stuff, if you're going to talk about orbs, you're going to come to an evaluation, at least look at the data.
Yeah. I talked to Jim actually about this whole incident. He sent me his medical records verifying the healing.
Yeah.
And that's clearly not dust, as some people say, or insects. I've talked to many people who've had this type of experience. I just recently talked to a lady in Florida who says, "Has you ever heard of orbs going into a person?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have." She says, "Well, I hurt my hand, and this orb came shooting at me and went right into my hand, and it stopped the pain." I'm like, "Yes, this is what they sometimes do." And I have to say, I've never heard of an evil orb. Honestly, I've never heard of a bad orb ever.
Well, you should read the book. Have you read the book?
I think the word that was used was frenzied. That's what I'm hearing a lot. Frenzied orbs. And okay.
The Skinwalker book. Have you seen it, Preston?
No, I haven't read it yet. I'm aware of it. It's on my list.
That's where the negative orb thing.
And
they got the 5, and they got the one thing that maybe Preston you should know about is kind of interesting that you maybe want to comment on is this idea that they talk about this hitchhiker effect that you probably have, and maybe I'd like to hear you talk about that. But the hitchhiker effect that once you've interacted with the phenomena, then you take it home with you. Now, everybody knows that a lot of experiences, they take it home with them and it goes on and all the paranormal stuff starts to happen. And they have this whole idea where it's sort of very negative and stuff is happening. And these special forces guys, the one guy it goes to his wife, and then these dog men people are standing outside, and there's these orbs and shadow figures moving around the house and stuff like that, and they interpret this as very negative. And then they tell the story that they give this briefing to Homeland Security. They're trying to take the ATIP program and they're trying to save it. They're trying to put it in another agency, and they give this high-level briefing to Homeland Security, and they scare the living daylights out of these 2 Homeland Security guys. It's a 3.5-hour briefing. It's supposed to be an hour. These 2 Homeland Security guys don't sleep that night. And so it would be a very negative thing. And that's this idea that they said that they're afraid to talk about it because it activates the phenomena. So what happened when they gave this briefing that night, there was a big incident that happened at Skinwalker Ranch. And that night, the son of this special forces guy is in bed and he's bombarded by these orbs and he's got these bruises and he's all sort of terrified and stuff like that. And that's this idea that you become one with the phenomena. And it can happen when you think about it, when you trigger it, it triggers all the stuff that's in the field. It's not an object that you drag back. It's this field thing where there's this consciousness aspect. And I basically, and I would like to hear your opinion, is the idea that you're manifesting. So if you see this, or George Knapp said, those that were the most aggressive to the phenomena had the worst experiences. So it has a lot to do with how you view life and the experience as to what's going to happen to you, how the phenomena reacts to you.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah.
Because what this has made me think of first and foremost is the other blue orb that we've heard a lot of public talk about is this one that shows up in Dr. Greer's CE5 circles. And I think most recently it showed up with him and Demi Lovato, and they call it happiness. So to go from like frenzied blue orbs to like happiness,
yeah, he also
kind of goes back, and it's like that's a huge spectrum.
Yeah,
so
and I think if you go back when what's her name, his assistant died in the 1990s. Oh,
yeah. Sherry Adamak.
They tell the story where Stephen is in the this cottage or whatever, and the orb comes in, and it turns into this blue being or whatever, and then go in. And that's the idea that the beings can come out of these orbs, or they're in the orbs, or they're this sort of thing. So he talks about this orb thing as well back in the 1990s. And now everybody's all sort of gotten religious about these orbs, and they're spinning this little story. And that's the part that annoys me, is they're basing it on a couple of cases that they've got that they cherry picked. And everybody is going to read the book and say, oh, orbs are horrible, and they're attacking people, and we need to fight them off and stuff like that. And if you're going to do it, at least look at the evidence.
Well, Skinwalker may be a portal to some negative orb energies, but doesn't mean all orbs are bad,
Well, okay, let me just, I'm going to Preston to get in, but as I said, it's not just Skinwalker Ranch, it's the whole valley. It's not, they want to take it like inside the fence, that's what's going on. And I've got the 2 experiences where people were outside the ranch. I have the one rancher that we are not going to identify. The stuff that he's filming on his security cameras makes Skinwalker Ranch look like kindergarten. It's the whole valley, and that has this whole idea about this tribe thing where they were putting curses on each other. Why is that whole valley have these bizarre things happening? And that's this idea, almost like when you saw the guys coming down the road, these special forces guys, they're coming down the road and they say, oh my God, they said, all of a sudden this fear comes over them and the temperature drops 20 degrees. And then they step in and they back away and it's okay. And then they come together, they come forward and the temperature drops again. That sounds exactly like a ghost. So if somebody commits suicide or gets murdered in a house, that's what you're going to get. This sort of a psychic overlay of energy. And so there's this energy, but it's not just Skinwalker Ranch, it's all through the whole valley. And so they've got this thing down to Skinwalker Ranch is this very special place, and there's a portal there. But I think it's got to do more with the whole valley and understanding why is that whole valley got that very sort of negative thing. And it may be this idea that there was these curses over the years that people built this field in there, and that this stuff happens, because it doesn't just happen at Skinwalker Ranch. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, well, the whole Wichita Basin is super active with UFOs. Frank Salisbury wrote a whole book on it, the Utah UFO display. And the vast majority of cases are very positive. I think what happens is when people have a strong fear reaction, they automatically label it as negative. And really, they are the ones who are negative. It's not the phenomena. Orbs are a regular part of the contact experience. Most experiencers have a lot of orbs going on around them. I know one lady in Australia, she can't take a picture of herself without an orb appearing. And she's now out there all the time taking pictures of orbs and calling them. She calls them her friends. So I'm just bowled over to hear this negative orb story, because no, I have never, not once, ever heard that before.
Have you been to the Utah, have that area in Utah, Preston? Have you been up there?
No, I have. I mean, I've driven through Utah a couple of times,
But not to the.
No, not to the Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
I think, Grant, you brought up a good point with saying that it is the intention, and maybe there is a double whammy there with it being Skinwalker and the cursed land, like you said. But I think we do need to keep hitting home that it's the intention of the people that are also going there. You know, there's been benign, incidences, and it's not that I'm trying to say, bad things happen to bad people that go there. It's not that simplistic. But I mean, I think all of us here have maybe gone through some of the lessons of the phenomenon. So, if you're carrying some baggage in there, that's what's going to come out when you're trying to have a heist experience. It's like your undealt with stuff is going to be at the forefront in that a little bit. So maybe that caught these fellas off guard when they're there at the ranch. Maybe they just fought with mom and dad back home, or their girlfriend, and they took all that anxiety.
Yeah. Or it's the intention, because you mentioned the intention, and even Brandon Fugel says that there's a reflective nature to the phenomena. And so what happens when Brandon Fugel goes in with his brother who flies the helicopter? He says, when we go in, we pray. And they tell these guys to be very, very careful about what they're thinking about, all this kind of stuff. And that's where I brought up this example, this doctor guy. And he's all skeptical. It's like, I'm this is all garbage. And then he gets zapped. And so when you go back to this original story that I told, where Lakatsky goes to Skinwalker Ranch, and this thing appears in behind the people where nobody can see it except for him, and it's floating there for 30 seconds and disappears. It's almost like the phenomena saying, welcome, you ready for the show to start? I mean, they know what's going on. And that's where so it's not evil people, it's what your intention is. That's what George Knapp said. Those that were the most aggressive. So if you're going in there, like you're going to capture it and you're going to take it on, get ready for a real bad show.
Well, maybe Preston can talk about some of the healing experiences he's witnessed with orbs and experiencers and the transformation.
That's what I was going to segue into. I think that since Preston hasn't read the book, they talk about a case in the book where the hitchhiker appeared, they had orbs at home, and then, to skip ahead, he pretty much dealt with cancer for the next 2 years of his life. So if he was supposed to be healed by this orb, why did he battle cancer? I think is what people are kind of confronting here. If it didn't heal him of the cancer, did it give him the cancer? My initial thought was maybe they healed him and cancer was like, yay, I only had to deal with cancer, but I don't know. That's my mind wanders.
Well, it's easy to make false correlations just because you see an orb and then you're diagnosed with cancer, or doesn't necessarily mean anything. Orbs are very common. I've seen orbs myself, And I've talked to many people who've seen orbs. One case that comes to mind was a lady who contacted me from Europe. She was very depressed, just moping around, had chronic depression, and was not able to get out of it. She was seeking treatment, but it wasn't working. And one day this orb comes into her kitchen, and it was quite large, like a grapefruit size, bright yellow. And she said it had this beautiful sparkling energy about it. And just being next to it lifted her spirits, and it started circling around her in the kitchen for a good 5 minutes. And she could feel all this depressive energy just being lifted away. And off it went out through the window. And she says her depression was gone and hadn't returned. She says, this thing came to take away my depression. Have you heard of this? And I'm like, well, that was a kind of a unique case. I haven't heard quite like that, where someone's cured of like a mental condition. Usually it's physical that I'm told about. But yeah, I love the orbs. I think there's still a lot of mystery to them. I remember when I went and visited the Queen Mary, I took a picture of the so-called haunted pool room. There was a big orb in it. And there's a lot of these are spirits. I talked to one guy who was a good friend and a contactee, and he had an orb come into his room. It started elongating and getting wider, and boom, it was his grandma coming to say goodbye. She had died.
Well, I was in the Turin church in Italy where the Shroud of Turin was. It wasn't showing the shroud, but I took a picture of that sort of altar. There was a huge orb right there above where that Shroud of Turin was. So maybe my theory is that the veils are getting thinner between the worlds, and this orb reality is just infiltrating or filtering into this 3D world where we're in these dual realities. So they are a part of our world. It's not like suddenly there are some bad guys, there are good guys there. We're interfacing.
Yeah. I suspect they're around all the time. Yeah. And because one guy in New York, he's a contactee. He sent me a picture. You could barely see him. He was so surrounded by orbs. And contactees have a really unique thing about them. Their vibration has been raised. They're somewhat spiritually enlightened. Their biophysical field is large. They can affect electromagnetic instruments, and they attract orbs. It's absolutely very common. And I think you might be right about the veils thinning a little bit.
Grant,
the other thing,
are you going to show the picture of you and Desta's field trip where she has her hands up and
we were doing that. Yeah, that was at that place where those sort of look like sugar, very granular. That's what they're all taken there. And we would do that. We'd take all four with all shooting in the same direction and stuff. And it was like an orb party, and everybody's got their cameras and they're all shooting. And then they got this big giant 80-inch screen, and we'd go and look on these things. But we were trying to pose. We're doing the posing. And I saw that from the one guy, his name is escaping me. I've invited him for the weekend from Sedona. And this guy is the best orb. He takes just amazing piles of photos. And they were doing the same thing where they were posing in Sedona and holding their hands out, and the orb would appear in the photograph on the person's hand and stuff like that. But one of the things I wanted to add is when I talk to people, and you'll hear like Annetta from Macedonia or Tress or a lot of these people, what they'll say is the way you make it appear is to have love in your heart, to think nothing but love, and that's when they start shooting and they'd start to appear. And you hear a lot of these contactees saying that. But one of the things I also want to add is I'm doing this book called The Given, that we were given stuff that helped us. So you're saying the veil thin, but one of the things we were given was the digital camera, and that's when this thing all started to take off, when the digital camera came in and people started picking these things up.
That is true. In the 1990s and mid 90s is when this thing happened. Yeah.
And so you have this idea of everything, like the computer and the internet, all these bizarre paranormal things that happen for them to enter into the world. And you start wondering, was this given to us to help lift consciousness and to change the paradigm where they knew that once we had digital cameras, we'd pick up this sort of stuff on the other side and it would shift consciousness.
Right.
Well, I have a picture actually, which I have pulled up. If I can share screen, I can show it to you.
Yeah.
Here, let me just do that real quick. Host disabled.
You know,
Let me see.
The
Yeah.
other thing about orbs,
I'll-
friend, is that sometimes you see patterns in these orbs. I just want to say for people who've looked at orb photos, I'm going to try to find.
Okay, Preston Dennett is now a co-host.
Awesome. All right. Let me
So
just
you're
show
able
you.
to share now. There you go.
Let me show you this one photo. This is when I joined CSETI. Stephen Greer came to LA and we went
Okay.
up to the Santa Susana Pass and started to call down UFOs. And I took a picture right before we did it. And look, you can see all these
Yeah.
orbs, a bunch of them.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, I don't see any evidence really. I certainly haven't run across any evidence that this is a bad thing whatsoever. I
Yeah.
think these are ETs coming to look down. I think they're spirits. I think it's part of the energy that you're
Yeah.
putting out. I think there's still a lot of theories as to what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
But I'm certain some of them are spirits. Some of them, I went to a channeling session once with my sister-in-law, Kisara, and a contactee. And we're all sitting in a triangle, looking at each other, talking. And this giant orb comes right in between us. And I'm looking at it because it looked interdimensional almost. And I wasn't sure if anyone else was seeing it. And I was tracking with my eye and I saw my sister-in-law see it. And then Wendy, she shouts out, "I see that too." And we watched this thing just go right between us down into the floor.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the whole channeling session.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it goes across the spectrum, that it's all over the place. It's not just on Skinwalker Ranch where they've got these orb things. This is like, come on, man, we've been dealing with this stuff. That's what Chris said. I've been doing this for 15 years. I mean, this is nothing new. And now we're taking it and spinning it into another thing. But it comes down to what your take is. If you're in the, what's it called, the defense warning office, I mean, if you put in, there's good orbs that are healing people, I mean, you're out of a job by the end of the day. I mean, you can't put that in a report if you're trying to get money for weapon research or whatever you're doing. Everybody's going to spin it their own way, and they just aren't looking at the evidence. So hopefully they will pick up on your stuff within. A lot of people report this in seances or in physical seances where there's orbs appearing and flying around and stuff like that. This is old hat, and I'm actually surprised that nobody has bothered with the evidence. They've just sort of made up a story, and unfortunately a lot of people are going to buy it.
Yeah.
There was an orb book out in the 90s. Do you know about that book?
That guy had 250,000 photos as well. That was the guy from Stanford. There was two of them. There was a guy from Stanford and a guy head of a university in England, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I could screen share this book.
Yeah.
Let me see if I get back there. Yeah, one of them was part of the Jay-Z Night Ramtha School Mihal led with, and the other was I don't know. He was part of a university. This is it, the Orb Project.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a lot of these orbs have these sort of designs inside, these complex geometries.
Yeah.
So
I would like to remind everybody of what was the wave of the 3 other photos that Mystery Wire released from the Pentagon or Corbell's secret source. They nicknamed all of them, of course, but there was the blimp with the payload that looked like this weird iridescent floating blimp. And then there was that you just showed on the cover of that book, where it was just like this throbbing orb thing. And then I forget what the third photo was. Was it the Batman balloon? I hate bringing that up now, but it was the Batman balloon one. But that is what, I mean, I focused on that one, of course, out of the release of those 3, because I'm like, that's the one that's over the Midwest. That's the one this isn't just out over the ocean. Like
you mentioned the photo on the front with this structure on the inside. There's actually a woman by the name of Marlena Marquin from Australia. She put a 4-color book. Mm-hmm. She's a scientist who actually analyzes these things. She has a procedure for analyzing. She actually can tell you what the structure means. She has the structure of the edge on the inside. This means this. She blows them up, and you can actually see the beings and stuff. Fascinating. And that's the part that annoys me, is that you have these people, and she's got, I think, a couple 100,000 photos and has analyzed these scientifically for years. And all this stuff is ignored. It's totally like it doesn't.
But you know what? I mean, I agree. I actually saw a face of Einstein in one of these orbs. I mean, maybe I was just imagining, but I think different portals have different connections to different types of energies. And maybe just the portal at the Skinwalker was to a kind of lower sort of negative type of astral beings.
But
right?
again, we're going back to the thing, the Skinwalker. They want you to describe it as just Skinwalker.
Oh, no, I'm not saying, it's everywhere, right?
Whereas people will say the portal thing, that the portal's inside you, like the spot is inside you, that there is no portal out there. You're the portal, you go in. And that's what they want to build, is this idea that Skinwalker is this special place that has these things, and it's very negative, and now it's spreading across the United States and that kind of stuff. Whereas I mentioned yesterday the fact that Chris Bledsoe had the thing followed him home, and I asked him about the shadow people in the house, and he said, "Oh, they're bad guys or whatever." And I said, "What do they do?" And he said, "They go along the wall and they go through." And I said, "Did you see the guy with the hat?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw that guy." And I mentioned the fact that I was contacted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We were sort of, they reported us for being too close to tracks when we were filming one time. And the guy comes, he says, "Hey, you got to investigate these Aboriginal. They seen these shadow figures with the hats." And it was the question, it's like, why is it wearing a hat? And it's almost like a dream sign in lucid dreaming. It's a sign that sort of indicates that you should pay attention. This is not what you think it is. It has some meaning. And so Chris Bledsoe brought it home with him, and he had all this positive stuff. He started healing people. And then Bob McGuire goes to his house. Bob McGuire has an experience with Chris. He goes home. He's healed. His wife is healed. So this hitchhiker thing happens all the time. All experiencers have this orb stuff, the paranormal stuff happening around them. And it's nothing new. They're making it sound like it's some new thing that they discovered at Skinwalker Ranch. This is old hat. We know all this stuff.
Right. What have you seen, Preston, as far as other healings? Because you wrote a whole book about healings and UFOs. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, there are many cases. My favorite, of course, is the Jim Schaefer case. That's the only case I know where someone actually filmed a UFO healing taking place.
What was that? What did they say?
We showed it. That was the blue orb. With
that one.
Jim, yeah, that's by far my favorite. And gosh, I have 300 cases of healings. I should be able to think of one right off the bat. But most of these involve beams of light and light of various forms. I am sure there are other healing cases, but one orb case of my own that comes to mind was when I was doing one of my own podcast videos about out-of-body experiences, and I was talking about my mom and how I'd seen her. And as soon as I mentioned her, this bright orb appears right over my computer. And I'm like, oh, and I instantly knew it was her. I mean, you kind of can tell. Yeah. There's an energy that comes off of them. So I think we have to really be careful when we're trying to label what these orbs are. Many of them are spirits. I had another orb experience, which was very unusual, which was clearly UFO, because I'd been talking about UFOs all night. This is 1992, and driving home, and this orb drops out of the sky, swooping towards my car. I thought at first it was a bird, actually, but it's late at night, and it was glowing. That didn't make sense. I could see now it was a round ball. I thought, well, maybe it's a firecracker. It was late July. But then it stops right in front of my windshield, about as far away as I am from the computer, a foot, maybe two. And it was a round ball of light about the size of a golf ball. And it goes back and forth in front of my windshield 2-3 times and dips down and goes straight up. And that's when I had missing time. I don't remember what happened next.
Wow.
So I think that was a probe. I don't know. I've talked to people who've had orbs come into their home, and it elongates, widens, and it's a gray. Out steps a gray ET.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of we really don't know what it is. I had a pattern of 14 different things that these orb people all had. They had certain characteristics. One of the characteristics was they all believed they could see a face in the orb, and they would show it to me and say, "Can you see this face?" And I go, "No, not really." And they think it was a relative, someone they knew, or a being or whatever. And so it comes to this idea that they're very sensitive, but you project we always have to remember we may be projecting what we're seeing. So we are the ones that are bringing it in. It's not like an independent object that's coming in. You are part of what you're seeing. So you may bring your mother in, or a being or whatever, that you're part of. It's a participatory universe. And it can be all sorts of different things depending upon who's the person that's having the interaction.
But could it be possible that we are all just orbs with a body? We are physical, but without the physicality, we may look just like that as well. I mean, right? I mean, that's us. I mean,
I hope so.
You're a beautiful orb, Nicole.
Right?
Well, there is if you look at the Michael Newton stuff, the Light Between Lives, where he does the 7,000 regressions, he does the same thing where he says to them, take a look at yourself. How do you look? And the person always says, like, I'm a ball of light. And then he'll say, what color are you? And you have this color from white up to purple. And the purple is the highest level. And then he knows he has these 5 levels of souls, how advanced they are based upon the color. But everybody's a ball of light. Like the one person describes, you go into this central thing and the souls are all going around. And then you go towards your soul group and they're going along this sort of highway. And it looks like grapes, like all these lights on like grapes and there's all these soul groups that they're seeing. And so in the spirit world, it looks like to me that people aren't lights. And so he asked them, well, what do you appear as when you see somebody else? And they say, well, if I see Alan, I'm going to appear as Grant because he's familiar with that. Or he likes my character as Grant. We played other roles in other lifetimes, but he likes Grant. So I appear as Grant. You can appear as whatever you want to appear. And that's what Yossi Ronan, the experiencer, was told. When we come into your world, we take on a shape. We can take on whatever we want. You can do the same thing. You just don't realize. And that was the one where the beings, all these green beings, all made this circle and then became translucent, and they're swirling around in this circle and became this ball of light, which disappeared. And that's why I say, is it a ball of light or is it an alien? And because people want to always do the thing, it's a flesh and blood alien. But as Leslie Kane described in this experience where the seance, the hand comes in, it becomes physical, and it bangs on the table, and she touches it, and it's a real hand, and then it goes back into the spirit world. It just disintegrates and goes back into the spirit world. And she saw it a number of times, and she's a pretty reliable witness.
Well, doesn't Paula Harris, you're going to be seeing her, doesn't she has this book, How Does One Talk to a Ball of Light? That's one of her books. Do you know that book?
I'm not sure which cases. I mean, sure, she's had.
No, it's Paula Harris, Exopolitics, How Does One Talk to a Ball of Light? That's
right. I just yell at him, honestly. I try all the time. I mean, Preston, you shared, some of your stories. Like,
this Paula's book.
Shortly after my son was born, these red ones would be all around all the time, and I would see them come in, and sometimes I called them like the pinpoints. They were just so tiny. And finally I got fed up with them. I'm like, you guys just go away and don't scare my son. Just go away. And then they come around less often. But I think my big moment, because I also saw this blue one, and once I found out Greer called his happiness, I was like, wow, I was extremely happy when I saw my blue blob orb. But my biggest one also revolved around my son, and it was the same weekend his father had left us, and I swear I was like having a mental breakdown. It was like the worst weekend of my life, and I like yelled out to the universe, like, why? It's like I had this whole moment, and that's when my light being appeared. And then I was pissed because it was shaped like the Virgin Mary and a child. And I was like, how dare you come to me like that? And it poofed into white orbs and just kind of laughter. I think right after I said that, I was like, what, am I supposed to go back to church? And then it was just laughter. And these white orbs just kind of floated off into my trees. And I looked at it as inspiring, like it made me feel better. And once I reflected on that moment, I'm like, that's so iconic. But in a way, it was the universe telling me we're going to be there for you and your son. Like what better image to send me mother and child than anything else. So I just, anytime there was that frenzied attacking orbs are bad talk over the last few days, those were the moments I kept thinking of. And now my son creates orbs So I
Wow.
thought I could share a few of those with
That's
you.
great.
There's
Can-
one.
Maybe you
This
could
was,
reach.
this was one of the very first ones that
Well,
he
that's-
shared.
Wow,
Keep
that's
talking
very
while you
creative.
show it. Keep talking while you show it, Nicole, because you
Oh.
off the screen.
Because it has to do the screen thing. Does it show you?
Yeah, you got to talk while you're doing it. Hey, that's pretty cool.
I thought I was trying to talk. Yep. This one's been up on my wall ever since he did it.
That's really good.
We
Excellent.
can sell that because
This was the one he brought home from school, though, and he was like, "Mom, we're doing circles," and I made an orb.
Okay, so what does he say orbs are?
He says they're light, but he has this whole thing going where light transport things. Light can transport anything, is what he repeats more often than not. You know, that's when he's like, well, duh, they just need to beam it up. Oh, they can just shoot it over on that light. So,
and he may be right. He may be right.
He might be. And that's what's funny because he loves Science Bob. And that's what Bob says. He's like, if William figures that out, he's got a Nobel Prize.
Wow.
I'm like, okay.
Well, I did find another good healing orb case, and I like this one because she actually felt it, which is actually pretty rare. This is a lady I interviewed. Her name is Alina Del Castillo, and she's a contactee her whole life. And she had cut her third left toe, and it became infected. And it got really, really bad. And she started praying. And she said, a large grapefruit-sized violet orb of light appeared, floated towards her, stopped right in front of her face. And I'll just quote her directly. She says, I then felt and saw the orb enter my shoulder, and I felt the sensation of warm energy trickle down my body and reach my toe. It was the most incredible feeling of instantaneous relief and comfort from this horrible pain. And just like that, it was gone. I never witnessed the orb leave, but I knew that it had healed me.
Wow.
And yeah, when she woke up the next morning, there was no redness, swelling, or pain.
Wow. Well, Grant, could you reach out to George Knapp or Lakovsky and say, look, you only got half the story there, or somebody, and say, you're giving orbs a bad name and there's all these incredible cases. I mean,
they may pick up on it and come to us. I'm not sure I want to try to convert them. I think everybody has to put out their truth. And I think to me, it's like we put out our side of the story and people decide. You just got to balance the story. I just thought it was so unbalanced in terms of, that's why I said, I mean, if you took out the joke where if you took out the Tic Tac case from the whole Nimitz case out of the book, I could see why people in the Pentagon thought this was demons. I mean, you got these shadow figures working around and these things are going in people's bodies and stuff like that. I mean, I can see how they would see this as demons because that's the way demons are described. And so it's a reflection of what you see. And, they had a lot of guys with guns. That's why I brought up the thing where they're talking about the injuries. I brought up the one with, they talked about John Burroughs at Rendlesham Forest was injured. And the question was, well, he got zapped by the when this thing flared up. The thing was that Peniston was closer than he was at the time, and right. Cabanzac was right behind him. And one of the stories Cabanzac told, and he's not done many interviews, was that John had pulled his gun, and John was the only one injured. And so this whole idea is you have to have the back. What was the attitude of the person? Were they aggressive? That's what George Knapp said, and he must know because he said those that were the most aggressive to the phenomena had the worst experiences. And Brandon Fugel says there's a reflective aspect to this whole thing. Be careful what you think about when you're on the ranch. And so that's where I say, we're part of the thing that we think it's we're an object and it's an object, but if it's all one thing, we're connected to everything around us and what we think matters. And that was proved by that briefing that was given to Homeland Security, where they give the briefing and all this stuff erupts around the country, this very negative stuff. And the briefing was very negative. The Homeland Security guys did not sleep that night.
Wow. Well, could this also be like not just a doorway there, but maybe they'll start showing up to regular people even, this whole, right?
But that's what my point is. They are showing up to regular people. We have these people from around the world who have all these stories and thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of photographs, and nobody's paying attention to these people. So we're going to try to get them on this weekend with Nicole to bring on these people and get them to bring, say, 10 or 15 of their best orb photographs. But these are people from Scotland, from Macedonia, from Hong Kong, from Australia.
What's happening this weekend? What is the thing this weekend?
Well, I'm trying to bring in these people. There's these people with these huge collections of orb photographs that they are out every night and they're photographing. And all around the world, and they have these patterns where they all have the mist photographs, they all have the beam photographs, they all have the orb photographs, and they've got these, and they out there, and they all use love in their heart, and they're describing this, and these orbs appear, and they say thank you, and they're talking to the orbs, and they're interacting with them, and taking these thousands and thousands of photographs. And that's what I say, you've got to talk to these people. They're being ignored.
You should call Michal Ledwith. He has a great thousands of collections of these orb pictures.
I don't think he's active though. I would have got him, but I don't think he's active anymore. But we have this Marlena Marquin, who's got, I think, 250,000 photographs.
Wow.
Chicago's got 100,000 photographs, works for Getty Photos and stuff like that. And just bring them together and see what they think when they hear people are now, demonizing orbs. Because these people, they live, or we were even in Illinois, down the road from Nicole in August, and this was a metaphysical tribe. None of these people knew about UFOs. They're all psychics and channelers and tarot card readers and stuff like that. And we had a CE5 that was run by a couple of people, and in there nothing happened. I said, oh, it's just like the regular CE5. We're sitting there, nothing's happening. It's like total waste of time. And then these people at the radio started to go off, and I filmed the radios. The radios started to chatter, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. And then this woman comes up and says, look at the photograph I got. Right beside me, Sinead Wellahan, there's this big thing above her, this sort of orb right above her. And I go, really? And then another photograph came. And then I said to the people, I said, who's got photographs? And they put out an email. There was piles of people getting photographs of orbs. And of course, Jeff from Chicago, I went to him because he's one of these guys that's got 100,000 photographs. I said, what do you got? And he said, oh, I've only got a couple. And he's got a couple of beams and orbs and stuff. And then about 10 minutes later, he comes, now I got a lot of stuff. And he was filming all these orbs and stuff. I didn't see them. But that's the thing is there's a lot of this stuff around. And if you're going to talk orbs, I think you've got to talk to the people who have got the material. And nobody's come to us.
Right.
There's if you look at the appendix, all the reports they've got, nothing has to do with orbs. So as far as I'm concerned, you have no authority to talk about orbs unless you looked at the data.
Right. So I'm just saying maybe we could reach out to George Knapp, I'm sure, and Lakovsky and say, look, there's this whole other side to the story.
Here, Alan, let me ask you this. What? How do you exploit a ball of light?
Is that what they're doing? Are they exploiting it to make?
They want to. So if they can't, they're just going to. They're like, hang on, we're still using light bulbs. Just leave the orbs alone.
How do you defend yourself against a ball of light? It's like that's a threat identification program right there.
Right.
So
I think change your attitude.
I know. Change your attitude is the key way.
Preston just did a case on healing lightning. So if you can get healed by a zap of lightning, maybe we just need to start electrocuting people.
Oh, I'd like to hear that. Can you tell us that story, Preston?
Yeah, I actually looked into it quite deeply because I knew of a lady, Mary Clamser, who was struck by lightning and it cured her of multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
And I started looking into it more deeply and I was shocked, no pun intended, to find some 30 or 40 cases stretching back to the 1700s all the way to the present day. The most recent was 2017. A teenage girl working at McDonald's was struck by lightning. It came through the water pipes and struck her while she was doing the dishes and knocked her out. And when she woke up, she was no longer nearsighted. Her vision was perfect. Cases of people cured of arrhythmia, typhoid fever, many cases of people cured of rheumatism. That's probably the most common. Blindness, deafness. There's a long list of conditions people have been cured of by lightning. I do have one orb case that I would like to put forth because it's really unusual because it actually rescued people from a shipwreck situation. This was June of 1994, and there was a regatta where bunches of boats would sail between New Zealand and Tonga. Well, this Force 10 storm struck, And one by one, the boats started becoming swamped and capsizing and tipping over. And all their EPIRBs, their electronic beacons, were going off at once. And the rescuers couldn't locate them because they were all, crossing over. And they're trying to, they were in radio contact with a lot of these boats, including this one couple, Bill and Robin Forbes. And their ship was broken and on the verge of sinking. And they had no way of locating where they were when suddenly this huge orb of light appears over their boat. And the rescuers say, okay, who shot off a flare? And nobody answered. And so Bill and Robin Forbes said, well, we didn't shoot off a flare, but there's this giant orb of light hovering over our boat. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that looks like it must be you then. And so they were able, this orb disappeared after a short while, but it was enough evidence for them to locate where Bill and Robin Forbes were. And they were the first rescued. And as soon as they pulled them off the boat, that boat sank like 1 hour later.
Wow.
So that is an orb rescue. If I see an orb, I'm going towards it. I think they're good news.
Right.
Another thing maybe I can ask Preston about, because you've worked a lot. And one of the things that they miss in the book as well is they have no talk about experiencers. They have a couple of military guys who have encounters or whatever. But that's the other thing they leave out is the experiencer. And that's what I say is that if you want to know what's going on, you talk to the experiencer who is actually interacting. So they have no evidence on orbs. They talk about it, but that's why I said, like, why is Chris Bledsoe not in this book? If we're going to look at the actual, what does the government know? Chris Bledsoe was briefed to the president of the United States. We know that everybody knows this story now, and he's not in the book, but he's a positive type case. So would you agree that the experiencer is where the answers are going to be, rather than looking at a sort of a military black ops thing or figuring out what the government knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Having done a lot of research into various aspects of the paranormal, orbs do appear with like ghost stories, but it's much more often with experiencers, for sure. And it's my main theory that orbs are often either probes from ETs or ETs themselves. I mean, there's another case in the book I wrote on healings where 3 orbs came floating down towards this couple. The husband was very sick with the flu. And again, these orbs elongated, widened out, and out stepped 3 human-looking ETs. And they said, you are doing good work. You need to be healed. And they healed him and then turned back into orbs, and off they went. Orbs are absolutely connected to the UFO phenomena. Right. And I think that's my favorite theory of what they are.
Before I forget, when Brandon Fugel was on our buddy Dave Scott's SOR, Dave asked him, have experiencers ever been allowed at the ranch? And he said, to his knowledge, no, that there's, been the scientific teams and just, people that lived there, but there hadn't been like purposeful, like a group of experiencers brought to the ranch. And if I'm remembering correctly, Mr. Fugel was like, I don't think anybody's ever even asked.
Well, I think Carolyn Cory's been there. She's in
now. This interview, I think, was last year. So now Miss Cory has been there, I believe.
He said it was a little, it felt weird. What's that?
What does Carolyn say about the?
She said it felt kind of weird. I mean, the place, she didn't, I don't think she had an experience. Let's get her on the show sometime and you can ask her. And I know Linda Moulton Howe said she felt pretty weird around that place, that she wouldn't want to go back there. So
I think the question posed to Brandon that night was, has there been like a CE5 circle there, or a group practicing heists, something like that to be tested?
But do you think that purposely spinning a kind of negative scenario to kind of keep up that whole idea of threat and not looking to experiencers? I mean, they do mention Whitley in that book, but just kind of passing over it. But what are they trying to do? They're controlling a narrative there the same way the ATIP news cycle was about, right?
Yeah, they're doing the whole threat, and because that's what I say. If they mentioned that defense warning office, that's involved and ATIP. And if you're in the Defense Warning Office, you're not going to come up with good stuff. I mean, you're not going to have an $800 billion budget. $800 billion defense budget means you're very, very afraid. You're very, very scared of everything. I mean, you need all this money. You know, you're the biggest bully on the block, and it's all based on fear. And that's what they're selling. You're just doing your job, so you can't blame them if you're, counterintelligence or you're, a weapons guy. You got to keep yourself in business, and everything is a threat to you. And if there isn't a threat, even there was an interview that somebody posted, I don't know if it was tonight, with Lou Elizondo about a war with China and the UFOs. And it's like, war with China? Like, come on. It's like, and I'm not sure whether they were spinning it or whatever, that he was going to talk about this, but that's the whole idea. It's this idea, if you're in the military, you're going to spin that, and you're not going to put anything positive. There was nothing positive in that book at all. There was no examples of positive ETs or positive stuff at Skinwalker. It was this thing, you've got to prove it's a threat, and otherwise you're not going to get any money. Because I remember I mentioned that Leslie Kane had mentioned this fact, that in the 1990s, in her book, she talked about it was a threat to airline traffic. And I guess everybody thought, oh, come on, that's crazy. And so you're always trying to find a way that you can get the funding, because you need a say, and you need something to sell something. There has to be a need. And then you say, I'm here, I've got the answers. We're a couple steps away, and give us $5 billion and we'll solve your problem. So it's not in, it's a threat thing. That's what they're still pushing, this scenario, and the stuff that we're talking about is not stuff that you want to put in your reports.
Well, I think you make a great point. Talk to experiencers, like Preston says. He's talked to probably hundreds of people with great experience, and that just has to be out in the public. Right now, this book is it's under 300 all-time Amazon sellers, bestsellers. Yeah. So it's really selling. It's out there, and people are getting another distortion of the phenomena, which is too bad.
But fear always sells. That's how it works. I mean, if you've ever done Consciousness Life Expo, you can do a consciousness presentation. You got 35 or 40 people, and you go across the hall where they're doing some circus act, and there's like 600 people in the room, and that's how it works. So people easily buy fear. They want to play the victim. They want to have Big Brother take care of them. I think we can just balance the evidence. We put it out there, and eventually I think we're going to win, because the one thing that is positive about this book that I will give them is they brought up consciousness. They said consciousness is part of this thing. We should be investigating consciousness. And now that's out. You can talk about consciousness, and the consciousness deniers, as I say, their days are numbered. They can't be laughing at you anymore, because the big boys have already said consciousness is part of this whole thing. So we are moving down the road. It's not like we need to solve this tomorrow. We need to win the game or whatever. We just have to do what we're supposed to do, put out what we believe is important. And eventually it's going to move in our direction. The consciousness will rise, and the vibration will change, and everything will, almost like your friend Paul Selleck said, in order for things to change, everything that's been papered over in fear has to be brought to the surface and reevaluated. And that's what's happening now. You bring the fear out, but people will evaluate it, and we'll eventually come to the right conclusion.
Right. He also says if you do things in fear, it will only create more fear.
More fear.
Yeah. Fear absolutely distorts your perception. You cannot perceive things well when you're in a state of panic. You automatically assume it's evil. I see it over and over again with this whole contactee phenomena. People will start out in a very traumatized state. They have nightmares, PTSD. And once they get over their fear, it changes 100%. One lady I talked to, Pat Brown, exactly had that happen. She actually went to Sedona, talked to a channeler claiming to channel ETs, and she said, "Oh, I'd love to go on your ships." Went home to LA, started having horrifying encounters with gray ETs for about a year, and finally said, "That's it, I'm done with it. I want to go on the ships and see if this is really happening." And boom, it became a very spiritual experience. And she did have this orange orb come into her room. And they said, "We are giving this orb to you for healing. You need to work with this for the next month to overcome your fear."
The same thing happened. Yeah. Matthew Roberts he was in a lot. He was one. I think he was on the Roosevelt. Saw those things, went into a lot of fear about it, went and had a lot of negative experiences, and then he said, "I'm just going to be with this." And then it transformed into this great spiritual awakening. He wrote this book called Initiated, Matthew Roberts, which is all about his transformation. So you're right.
That goes across the same thing they talk about, like psychedelics, I know, because the whole thing is there's only one rule. Surrender is the only rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule. You have to surrender. Same as a near-death experience. When they do the research on the people who have the bad near-death experiences, they're people who can't let go. So when you look at the UFO thing, these people, when it first happens, they have the paralysis. They're disassociated. They're in fear. They don't know. And I always make the joke: once they suddenly realize what's going on, they become messiahs, and you can't shut them up. And they're running around and they're telling everybody what's going on. And Chris Bledsoe started that way. For the first 9 months, Chris Bledsoe sat in a chair in a room and prayed for God to take him out. His whole life, his whole worldview was shattered, and he didn't know what to do. And his wife said, "You're not going to talk to the kids about this." And he's staring out the window, and he didn't know what to do. He was just devastated. And look at him now. I mean, he's realized what's going on, and he's the guy that basically says, I mean, they're distorting this whole thing. Even the lady said when they disclose, they're going to, I can't remember what the word is, they're going to flip it, they're going to distort it. And that's what you're seeing is happening. This disclosure is coming, but because it's the government, it has to be this fear aspect that you need us, and everything's built in fear. But that fear will eventually leave a lot of people. But it requires this surrender thing, that once you surrender, then you're allowed into the mystical side of the field. But until you do, get ready to go to hell.
Yeah. Well, I think what you hit it on the nose. ETs are a threat to the government structure, to the us being all enslaved. I'll just say it, and dumbed down, and this unequal distribution of wealth and the greed and the corruption. It's a threat to that structure. It's a threat to their jobs, to their money. To them, it is a threat. To the people, at large, no, it's really good news. I'm super excited, actually.
Right.
That was even in the 1950s. The FBI was investigating Adamski and all these guys because they thought they were Russian spies. It wasn't they were against the guy with the thing. It was the message that they were bringing. This oneness message, and everybody should work together and all this kind of stuff. And they were really scared about the message they were putting out.
Right. The Day the Earth Stood Still is about that message,
Yeah.
And so I don't think the book was purposely made negative. I think those are just the attitudes of the military that don't know any better. They think the whole world is like that anyway, out to get them. So they create these orbs that are out to get them, right?
That's why I say the original thing, when Lakatsky goes there to Skinwalker Ranch, he's not going there. He's going there because they were reading the book, the Skinwalker book, in the Middle East with all the military high-ranking guys, and they looked at it and said, "Wow!" And if you're a defense intelligence guy, you're looking at it and, wow, if we could figure out how this works, how the portals work, and how do you make stuff bulls into trailers, and how can you make stuff move in and disappear, and all this kind of stuff. And that's why he went there. That's originally why he went there. It had nothing to do with UFOs. It had to do with this paranormal stuff that they were trying to figure out if we can weaponize this, or if we don't weaponize it and the Russians and Chinese get it. It's that mentality. You're right. It's this mentality that, you can only produce what your background is, that there's no good or bad people. There's just people with good and bad belief systems.
Right.
One point I do want to bring up, speaking of orbs and what they might be, I think it's more than just spirits or ETs, because there are many cases which you can find in the literature where people have seen a small orb. It drops down out of the sky, it's hovering over a field, and expands into a full-on ship, a large ship in some cases, a mothership even. So some of these are actual alien craft, or perhaps a portal to one.
There's also, I was just going to say, there's also videos of orbs creating these crop circles, these lights.
Alan, you're reading my mind. That's what I'm thinking of too. Yeah.
Maybe we could find that's on the internet somewhere. Maybe I could find it.
The castle video.
It's the castle video.
It's called the castle video. Yeah.
We can
with-
save that one for the panel too. That would be a good one.
Well, Alan's gonna play it if he can pull it up here on
if I can
YouTube.
find it, Castle Orb.
Castle Crop Circle
at these
video. Quick
minutes
Castle
we
Crop
do.
Circle video.
Castle Crop Circle.
And
Okay.
that's the thing is these orbs have been around a long time. I had one in the 1970s. I've told the story many times about the big triangle that came. It started with these orbs on the ground. We were flashing lights out and they were flashing back. And then I had the one at the bridge. He had that bizarre film, the light that Preston probably knows about. This bizarre light that doesn't light up anything. I was like 50 feet, not even 50 feet. I was going to jump on this thing. It was about 2 feet across. And that's how it all started for me. So what they were doing there, it was basically, my attitude was not like an evil thing. I just wanted to touch it. And it dragged me into this phenomena. It was dragging me in to get me interested. It let me get really, really close. And after that, I couldn't put it down. And so I think a lot of this is all planned, and it's, I don't see any negative to this at all, unless you've got a negative attitude and you take it in there, then get ready. Did you get it, Alan?
He's muted.
He's been abducted.
Yeah, remember Glenda the Good Witch? She came in the form of an orb.
Yes, exactly. I'm looking for it. It's maybe you could find it, Grant. It's not. I see one that's not very clear. It's someone photographing a crop circle appearing, but it doesn't show the orbs very clearly there. Maybe there's a better one. This is the Barberry Castle 2008 crop circle. Let me just look for another one. Okay. Crop. Anyway, there's lots of video. You know, Whitley has a great collection of these things appearing in his room. I saw one.
There was actually one we were on with him in that one conference, and it happened when I was speaking. I was right after him, and that was Anne coming across the camera there.
Yeah, it appeared out of the corner of the curtain and went right towards the camera. He sent that to me, actually. You should ask him if you could use that. Let me see. Crop circle orb video. Let me see video. Let me see if it shows up here better. Bizarre crop circle appears. No. I don't know.
I think
you got it. Yeah. Let's see. If you got it, let's see it then.
We just got the ad here. Someone tell a story before we go here. Hang on. What the heck?
Let's just see.
Okay, I've got it. So get ready here. Let me.
Okay.
Your screen share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, make it larger. The picture. You make the whole. And get rid of the ad. Oh, there. Okay. Oh yeah, those are those white lights. They're actually forming the circle there. You can see the circles being laid down when that white light is over the field. This is the only video of a crop circle actually being formed.
Yeah.
That's great. That's worth showing in slow motion, you know, like, and showing the lights and as the circle, that's classic. That's 2008 Barberry Castle circle. And I've been to England. I've stood in these circles, and you really feel a vibration there.
There's actually people there as well. And of course, they're saying it's just hoaxed. I mean, that's the way out of it. Here comes an orb here.
Oh, is this another crop circle? Yeah.
This is an orb going across the fields here. I don't know if you can see it all that well.
I couldn't. Oh, yeah, it's very faint. It's very faint. No, it's not. They paid those guys to come forward, Doug and Dave. They paid them £100,000 to say they were doing it after drinking in a bar all night. They go out and for fun, they make these crop circles. But they could not have made these sophisticated circles because the crops are not broken. They're bent.
There's 3 of them, yeah.
That's a great one. What's that one called?
Sure.
Well, gentlemen,
You-
I think this might be a good time to wrap it up too. I've got to get my little gentleman in bed. It's a school night.
I think
Okay,
you proved your point, Grant, that orbs are not all bad. Not all.
Yeah, I don't think there's any good or bad. It's